You're listening to Ecosysteming, the podcast redefining economic development through the lens of equitable entrepreneurship. Join NC Idea as we engage with entrepreneurs and experts who are challenging the status quo and driving lasting change.
Welcome, viewers of the Ecosysteming Podcast. I'm your host, Tom Rue, and today I am so, frankly, lucky to have in studio with me Stan Parker, who is currently serving as General Partner of Winston-Salem Partners Roundtable Fund. Forgive me for having to read that because most of us all know it as the Whisper Fund.
Whisper Fund.
So you are the General Partner for the Whisper Fund at the moment. We first met when you were serving as president of Winston Starts, and you have an extensive CV we're going to get into. But before I do, and I hope you don't mind, I'm going to ask you one very personal question.
Yes, sir.
Right out of the gate. I want to know how it's possible to have worked at Krispy Kreme for over a decade and be as fit as you are. I would have had to been rolled in like in a wheelbarrow after a decade at Krispy Kreme to record this podcast.
Well, the last 6 years were pretty tough, so that took the pounds off, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, I guess work stress is a real thing, isn't it?
That's right, very real in that case, yes.
Well, Stan, all kidding aside, thank you. It's a joy to have you in the studio. I said as we were warming up that I do consider you a great friend. You've certainly been a great partner to NC Idea, and Winston Starts has been a great ecosystem partner. And I think that's reflected in how many of our funded companies call Winston Starts home. So I know you're currently in your Whisper capacity, and we will go deep on that. I really want the viewers to understand the role of the fund and its organization and structure, and not the least of which its partnership with the chamber.
Yeah.
Because I think that's unusual.
Yeah.
But before we go there, do you mind if we just start with Winston Starts?
Sure, can do.
So I've been around 10 years now, and I think my first introduction to Winston Starts, it was still a concept under construction. I remember getting a tour of the building when, I think we had to wear hard hats for that tour. When was that?
Yeah, that's probably about 8 years ago.
So that's when it all kind of came together?
It does, yeah. It does. I think it's going into its 8th year this year. It came about as a result of some folks like Don Flo, John Whitaker, Todd Johnson, Steve Lineberger getting together and going, at one time, Winston-Salem was really a hotbed of startups, if you go back far enough. Reynolds, Haynes, Wachovia, which is now part of Wells Fargo, Piedmont Airlines, which became part of U.S. Air, and now American, Texas Pete. So a lot of companies, and the question was, how do we get that back? And so a couple of folks by Steve Lineberger went around the country and talked to some other ecosystems.
Really?
How do you do this?
So they did the national tour, which is pretty common.
Tour and tried to hit some big cities, but also smaller markets like ourselves. And, what are the elements? How do you help entrepreneurs? How do you help entrepreneurs start out and grow their companies? And probably the model, it's an interesting model, took a little bit from everywhere and started up about 8 years ago with the idea of helping founders by providing some great space. It's about 35,000 square feet of space there in Winston-Salem, downtown Winston-Salem, in the old GMAC building. Some great workspace, mentorship, coaching, educational programming. Winston Starts does not invest in the companies, but helps them prepare to raise money if they want to do that and make connections. And I think one of the most unique things about it is how long you can be there. You can be there almost 4 years. You don't have to be. But lots of folks have to make pivots, and that takes time.
I didn't know. So you push them out of the nest at 4 years?
No one's ever been pushed out.
Okay.
And they can, we say that 4 years. There's probably a couple of folks who've been there a little longer. It's a great deal for them. They pay a very small amount for the space to get all these things, and people generally will start to outgrow the space.
Right.
And we've talked about, what do we do? What next? And that's an active conversation right now because they're still in a stage where they need support.
Right.
And so how do you make that a soft landing and give them the different type of space and different resources they need when they're getting later in the scaling process?
I suspect you, to a certain extent, you're burdened by your success, right? You've built such great community there. If I was, building my company there, I could see a reluctance to leaving,
Yeah.
right? Because, we know this. You and I, we're old timers long in the tooth in this ecosystem building space. We know that community is a form of currency.
Yes.
It really is. And I don't mean just currency, like hard
Yeah.
currency. like there's value in these networks, collision of networks, the mentors, the people you bring, your community.
Yeah.
Don Flo, for one, like one of the most successful business people, in the state,
Yes.
right? And like these are people that you wouldn't have access to kind of in the general public. So I could understand why, people would want to stay around for as long as
Yeah.
they do.
And the mentors are fantastic. I think our founders would tell you they get just as much learning from the other founders who might be totally different business, different vertical, but they may be 3 months or 6 months ahead of where they are. And sometimes I've heard them say, it's not like I can't tell you what to do, but sometimes I can tell you whatever you do, don't do that.
Right.
So it keeps you from going down that rabbit hole. And so the mentors and the other founders are very gracious about paying it back and paying it forward. It is a great community, and I will say this about Winston-Salem: the folks there are they will help you, and all you have to do is ask. And if they can help you, they probably know someone who can, and they will literally take you over, walk you over, and introduce them. And so it is just a terrific community. We're small enough that can still happen, but large enough that there are folks with a lot of expertise and capital too that can help out.
How have you been able to curate that esprit de corps, right? That community. Like, what's the secret sauce there? Because like y'all Steven, went and did his homework.
Yep.
And now you've created that lightning in a bottle. But how have you created that lightning in a bottle?
I think it's Winston-Salem. I'll be honest with you. When he went around and before even Steve went around the country and started benchmarking folks, he talked to some folks who were around when some of these companies were getting going, and they all talked about how they helped each other out. And through advice or loans or investment, and even though that was a long time ago, it's still there, and it's a community where these folks know each other. They've been there. It's not. We have folks moving in all the time and are part of it too. We've got people that have been there for generations and take a lot of pride in Winston-Salem. They just want to help out, and so we're tapping into that.
Do you think, I've been asked this from kid from Cleveland, Ohio, so Midwest, born and raised, so to speak. Do you think that's a Southern culture thing? Do you think it's just a historical artifact of Winston-Salem and, how it created community wealth, going decades ago? Or is it the concerted effort? Like we struggle with that, right? Like we've helped and funded over 500 companies in the last 20 some years. And we always want to have that pay it forward back is what I call it.
Yeah.
That's my attempt at being clever. Pay it forward back. And, to varying degrees, I'll take the high road and say we're not as successful as we'd like to be. And so I'm trying to distill that. Like, how do you do that magic?
Well, you guys do a great job. Tom, you're being modest, but I don't. So I grew up. I was born and raised in North Carolina, but I have lived in New York and Dallas and Singapore, and traveled. I think a little bit of it is a Southern thing. I'd like to think, and then I think the size has something to do with it. In Winston-Salem, I think, Forsyth County is around 400,000 folks. It's pretty easy to get around. It's easy. It's just easy. It's easy. And I think that's a factor. I think the history is a factor. The culture is a factor. And people just take a lot of pride in the place and in the city and want to make it better.
So, I mean, Winston-Salem is a major metro area. Forsyth County, you just said 400,000 people, but you get much out of the city limit, it starts getting rural pretty fast.
Yes.
Do you see a role for Winston Starts, in supporting kind of like an exurb/rural community? Because, you guys can be that central location where folks in these rural communities where they don't have that density, they don't have the access to the networks and the mentors and stuff like that. Is that baked into the mission of Winston Starts in any way?
Not originally, but it is now. Originally, it was a 100% focus on Winston-Salem and Forsyth County. And about 2 years ago, as we felt like we had the model was working, we had worked out the kinks, and two things we wanted to do. One, we had typically started or historically started with companies in Winston-Salem, Forsyth County that already had some traction. They were past the idea stage. There were a couple of other folks who would help people at the idea stage and would be like pipeline into us. Along the way, they stopped doing that. And we thought, hey, we need to, I talked a little bit about giving soft landing to companies who kind of are graduating out.
Right.
But the other hole we had in the pipeline was the idea stage. And so with your help and NC Ideas help, we were able, you gave us a grant to start an idea stage program, which we call Explore. And we also thought that program would give us a better entree into the more rural markets, where we can help you with the idea, and you don't have to. And we made it. The first year we did it, before we got help from you guys, it was a lot like our typical program, where it was an in-person program.
Okay.
You came in, mentors. You're just at a different stage, and what we found out as we got feedback after a year was they said, "Hey, we love it, love the program, but we have jobs." We're like, "Oh yeah," so it's a little hard to come in here at 2:00 on Wednesday, and we thought, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." So
yeah, we have to remember we get paid to do this.
That's right. So always talk to your customers. So we said, "Okay, we've got a great curriculum here. We've got great mentors. We've got space if they want to use it. But how do we deliver the programming if they can't come in?" And so you guys helped us with a grant to create an online program, and we extended that out to the rural areas. And last year was the first year of that program being online, and they can come in if they want to, but they don't have to. And it's going well. I think we've got some trust building to do in the rural counties, that they don't look and think you're trying to steal our companies.
Yeah.
And the only thing that will make the partners out in the rural counties feel better about it is showing them that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And so that's just going to take Ben Redding and I've talked about it quite a bit, and what can we do, and we keep at it and have some success stories, and hopefully in 2 or 3 years that program is up and running with a lot of traction.
I understand that skepticism in rural communities. I was at my first year on the job. I went to one of the Rural Center's annual conferences, and I remember they were giving somebody kind of a Lifetime Achievement Award, and he was reminiscing on their body of work and said, of rural communities, they'll take your money, but they won't trust you. And I took that to heart. And so, my first year in this role, I put over 40,000 miles on my car. Yeah. Because the way we have found it is you got to show up.
I think that.
Right? And you got to show up more than once. and you got to demonstrate that you're going to be there for them. But I know we share that value, but let me just put you on the spot for the soundbite. Like, why is it important for us to support rural entrepreneurship?
Well, I think there's great entrepreneurs out there, for one, and they just they need the tools, and they just may not have had exposure to that how a business is started. Just drawing on my own personal experience growing up, I was born in Chapel Hill and I grew up in Hillsboro, and it was a totally different place at that time. It just happened to be, 10 miles from Chapel Hill. But when you went up 86 and you crossed into northern Orange County, you people were farmers or mill workers, and so as a young boy growing up, that's what I related to. I mean, you relate to most people, what's tangible.
Right.
And so bringing something different to these folks, and I'm not saying, but it helps. And it's showing them, yeah, here's a way of doing something that maybe you haven't thought of, and here's some tools, and then it's going to create jobs eventually in those communities, and they're going to be more self-sufficient, which we all want.
I think, yes, this. I'm saying this basically for the benefit of our viewers. I live in Hillsboro,
Yes.
and I live north of. My mailing address is Hillsboro. I think it's Cedar Grove, to be honest. And so it is still all farms, and and I mean, it's one of the reasons why we chose to live there was quality of life. And I think to myself, in just 10 years, how strange it is that I've been accommodated. Like when I have a hankering for a steak or, any of my meat purchases, I don't pick those up at the market. I just go up 86. It's about 8 miles from my house, Baldwin Beef.
Okay.
I'm going straight to the source.
There you go.
Like I can buy right from the farm.
Yes.
Right. And I think that's just an incredible quality of life thing. But I appreciate that sentiment. And I would also argue that some of the most entrepreneurial people are the people living in our rural communities out of necessity, right? And so that's a huge untapped potential for the state from an economic, impact standpoint.
Yes.
And so I think we share in that desire to support rural entrepreneurship. It's interesting, coming from the Kauffman Foundation, where I had the good fortune to work, and I know people that work at like the Gates Foundation as well. People forget, like, some of our biggest foundations, a lot of them were created by wildly successful entrepreneurs, right? That's how the endowments get created.
Yes.
The concern I have is, and people are taking notice, there's writings about this, like the Chronicle of Philanthropy and others have been studying this. There's tremendous fortunes being created right now. There's this generation of mega successful entrepreneurs. But we're not seeing altruism or philanthropic ambition. And I got to tell you, it's a head scratcher for me. Like if I had access to some of these people, I would say, what's your greatest ambition? You want to die with the most toys?
Yeah.
I mean, wealth creation is a wonderful thing. It has it's made our country great. There's a little bit of a backlash around entrepreneurship.
Right.
There's a fringe of the political spectrum that thinks, capitalism is dirty or whatever. And, both sides have the lunatics on the fringes for sure.
For sure.
Right. So wealth creation is it's a great thing when it happens. It strengthens communities. But it's particularly impactful when gentlemen like Don put their wealth to work for the sake of humanity.
Yeah.
Right. And I just wish that gene mutation was more broadly shared.
That would be nice.
And out there, because there's so much. I mean, I'm not saying anything that's earth shattering here. We're kind of tribal at the moment. Right.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that supporting the entrepreneurial potential of everyone serves everyone. Right. That's a way to advance humanity through the flourishing of others.
Yes.
So, like, isn't that one thing we can all unite around right now?
You think? You would think.
You would think.
Yeah.
You would hope. But we were talking mutual admiration between the two organizations, Winston-Starts and NCIDEA. I want to give a plug because of all of our partners, like Winston Starts, I don't know that we have one that we share as many great startups, namely Bean Dynamics, Home for Life, On Holiday
On Holiday,
recently,
most recent.
Renaissance Fiber, Stems, Three Strands Recovery Wear, and WH Farms.
Yes.
And we both know there are some real hot shots in those groups. As a matter of fact, I was just recently at Seed the South, and David from Beams made one heck of a presentation. And I'm not claiming to be unbiased by any means, but I certainly felt like he was the strongest of everybody that had presented. And also not lost on me was the fact that last year's winner was Run Bin Dong, of Scale Social. And it was cool seeing him as a judge this year. But On Holiday
Yes.
just got a seed grant, so they've just entered, the family, to use our language. Stems, Amy was in that hot seat just a few weeks ago.
Right.
Her episode is streaming as we speak. You could get out there wherever you get your podcasts, and just how incredible is she? I mean,
She's
talk
fantastic.
about and also connecting right to the rural community
Yeah.
with what she's doing for growers.
Yeah.
How did you guys connect? She just stumble into your door one day, or
We were, I'm trying to remember who introduced us to Amy, but I think she had been down here and part of NC Idea first,
she did.
and
She
went
was
through
a
some of your
micro.
That's right. And I think post that is when we were first introduced to Amy, and she came in, and no, I know what it was. I think she maybe approached Whisper. I know we're going to talk about Whisper shortly for some funding, and they had suggested that maybe Winston Starts could help her. And there's not a formal relationship between Winston Starts and Whisper as an arm's length, but back to the Winston-Salem collaboration thing. And I think probably Whisper referred her over. And we sat down with Amy and looked at her model and thought it had a lot of promise. And we had a couple of folks who we felt like could help with the hub and spoke logistics. And so she went through our typical programming, and we got her matched up with a couple of mentors who are still with her and working with her closely. And she is off to the races.
Yes, she is. And like you said, Stems, I think Beam as well. I think we have 3 that are Winston Starts, Whisper, and NC Idea.
Yes. On Holiday, Stems.
Is Beam one?
Beam is one.
And Three Strands?
Three Strands is one.
That's it. Those are the 4.
And so there's a lot of overlap. You're right.
A lot of overlap. So we've been teasing the Whisper fund. Let's give it its due diligence now and its time. So for the viewers, listeners out there, origin of Whisper, timing, motivation.
Sure. Probably every year, Winston Starts will survey the founders and say, what are we doing well and what do we need to be doing better? And, they give us high marks on mentorship, coaching, the space, on everything except for access to capital. It's always the number one thing they're looking for, and we were not doing a good job helping them with that, in their opinion. And so this goes back to Don Flo and Todd Johnson and some folks who said, well, let's fix that. And so Whisper, Winston-Salem Partners Roundtable was created. That was not the original name. I can't remember, but Red Maxwell, who's a member, said that name stinks. You need to come up with something that people can remember. And so Whisper it was. And Whisper is getting ready to go into its 6th year in July. And so it's been around, if Winston Starts is 8 years, it's been around about 6. And you do not have to be in Winston Starts to get funded by Whisper, but almost every company has been, except for maybe 1 or 2. It's a natural. When I was at Winston Starts and felt like a company was ready, I would tell the guys at Whisper, which I wasn't part of at that point, I think these guys are ready Would you take a look at them? And they get a pitch, and the general partners would do a screening pitch, and then if you got past the general partners, you would do a pitch to the entire membership. And
May I ask how many members there are?
there's about 80 members,
And is it
and
a committed fund or just a funding network?
funding network,
Okay.
angel fund, and so each member can decide individually to invest or not. The general partners will look at a minimum threshold level of $100,000. We hit that in terms of indication of interest. We'll go into some due diligence, barring any problems. A founder can get a check in 4 or 5 weeks, so it's a pretty quick process.
Wait.
Yeah.
Wait.
Yeah, no, and I
They
think
can get a check in 4 to 5 weeks?
after the pitch, you get a pitch, indication of interest from the members. If there's enough interest, due diligence, then cut the check.
Are you sure that's enough torturing of the founder?
So I think part of the reason is usually the founder is pretty familiar to the community already.
Right.
They've already been in Winston Starts a year, although they don't have to, a year or two. And so we've known David. I mean, we love David. We love all our founders, and those folks that we've all are supporting are really good. But we've known them quite a while now. We've watched them pivot. We've watched them react to adverse conditions and get through it. And so when they come in for funding or follow-on funding, we're pretty familiar with them by the time. I'm speaking about Whisper now.
Yeah.
And we're pretty familiar with them. So I think that helps in terms of the timeline.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. Obviously, I'm just being silly, but I mean, that is also a refrain, right? If you go, so yes, they're always going to say access to capital. And then if you get granular on that, it's like the process,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Death by 1,000 cuts. And, and there's some validity to that. I will say that the access to capital argument is, I mean, I've been in this business, this line of work for over 2 decades now. And that's coming from the entrepreneurship side. And then I kind of crossed over to help.
Yep.
And 20 years ago, they were saying access to capital and the process itself, right?
Yeah.
And like I said, I think North Carolina is largely an exception, but there are plenty of funds across the country. I mean, I saw a lot of this in my Kaufman work where it's a club. It's not truly a fund, and the pitches are more like dinner entertainment. And it's not particularly helpful. So I'm always kind of straddling the fence between the funders and the founders to say, okay, you're both right to varying degrees, right? And like I said, I think actually I want to exclude certainly Whisper with that kind of a turnaround, and most of the funds in the state of North Carolina. Again, it might be a Southern, cultural nice thing, like, hey, we're gonna be direct with you, but in a polite way.
Yep.
And let you know where you stand. But I teed this up in your intro about Whisper specifically, that it's got a form, if I'm reading it correctly, it's a formal partnership with the chamber?
Yes. So they provide some support in terms of admin support, and also if they're aware of companies, they're making us the company's aware of us. Mark Owens, who heads up the chamber, which we call the Greater Winston-Salem Inc., which is confusing to some folks, but that's our Chamber of Commerce, is a great supporter of entrepreneurship in Winston-Salem, both Winston Starts, Whisper, and we couldn't ask for a better partner.
Well, then I got to take a minute and give them a kudos, a shout out, because I know it's a little off topic, so forgive me for a second. But again, my work in building ecosystems, not only in the United States, but around the world, chambers of commerce, generally speaking, not great partners in advancing entrepreneurship. And when you think about it, right, at the essence, like you're a member organization, existing companies, and you're like, you're going to take my dues and support something that might end up creating a competitor to me.
Right.
So I've worked with many chambers. I've been approached by many chambers that, hey, And I think for most, it's not sincere as it is, in Winston-Salem. Like, we want to say we're pro entrepreneurship, but at the end of the day, it's like their members largely don't stand for that.
Yeah.
So yet put it's the cherry on the extraordinary Sunday that is Winston-Salem, that you guys can look beyond that and say, hey, this is rising tide argument,
Yeah.
right? It's
I
good for
agree.
everybody.
Yeah.
Um, I commend that. I wish we saw a little more of that esprit de corps, that camaraderie at the state level. And I'm gonna, I needed, since I've got somebody with your experience in the hot seat, to draw out your feelings about ecosystem building as a kind of an economic development priority. Um, that support between Whisper and the chamber, like, we don't see that at the state level.
Right.
Do you have an observation about, I mean, like, you as everybody else knows, are traditional form of economic development,
Right.
right? Hundreds of millions of dollars to encourage, you know, companies to move to the state, best state in the nation for doing business. Um, but what about our hometown heroes that are, slaving away, starting the companies that are creating these jobs that we so desperately need and value, and the wealth that's going to stay in the community, right?
Right.
If it gets built
Yeah.
here, would you care to pontificate on that?
Sure.
And
Well,
it's
I
just
think
between. We'll keep it just
yeah,
between
between
us.
us. Okay. Well, I'll start out with being in violent agreement with you on your position. And uh, most studies will support the fact this stuff doesn't return when the economic incentives paid out does not return in total. And but I think why do they do it? It makes good. It makes good PR for politicians, right? And these announcements are immediate, and you get to take the picture and the shovel, and but the startups and entrepreneurs take time, and you may not be in office by the time and the failure rate's high. And it takes time before all these jobs come, but the return is fantastic. I think in Winston-Salem, we and this may go back. Mark Owen is very forward thinking about this. We try to attract companies too, but we don't think that that's going to be enough for Winston-Salem. We don't think a lot of large companies are going to move there, so we have to grow our own. And so I think that's why Mark and everyone else has such a attention about it, and such enthusiasm about doing it. It's key to our future success in Winston-Salem.
Now, that being said, and I tend to agree, right? Like, it's probably more fertile ground, to torture this growth metaphor, to gestate our own. But man, it sure would help with a little extra water, a little extra fertilizer, right?
Sure would.
I mean, I recall a story. I was speaking with this woman. She founded a very successful life science company in the Triangle, in the park, grew it to a couple thousand employees. Was trying to get help from some of the usual sources, but it was like, you're here. We don't, there's no like codified program to sanction tax incentives for you or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I remember with astonishment hearing her say, and then she saw the state give this lucrative incentive package for a competitor to move to North Carolina. And she was like, that was it. That was
Yeah.
the tearing point. And she ended up moving the company, I think, to Spain or Portugal, right? Thousands of jobs. As a company she eventually sold. And she's still here and her wealth's here.
Yeah.
But like, think of the missed opportunity there.
Yeah.
Right. And I know the grass is greener, but I don't know how we change the dynamic, the thinking. I think, to your point, those big deals that get announced, it's just, in both, this is not a party issue. It's not a partisan issue. Both sides are equally guilty. Everybody's there for the shovel ceremony.
Yep.
Nobody's there when the headlines come out that, Apple's not going to build that big
Right.
headquarters that, we had the fanfare of several years ago. I don't know. I guess what I'm just saying is I think it's one of those things that all of us in this space can collectively stay on point messaging
Yes,
wise so that we can elevate this notion that let's invest in ourselves,
yeah,
man.
yeah.
Right?
Well, Tom, you and NCI do a great job telling that story. I think we just, like you said, we just got to keep telling it and pointing to the successes and saying, it's not either or. It's probably going to be both, but you could do more over here, and here's some results. And we just have to keep with it. And I appreciate your leadership on it.
That's I'm gonna keep doing this until the board fires me.
Well, there you
Because I'm sure I'm pissing some people off, but
well, keep on, brother.
I'm also addicted to data, right? So
Yeah, the data tells the story.
here's the novel concept, right? Let's just look at what's working and do more of that
That's right.
and less of the other stuff that doesn't. So if you and I were in charge, what would that look like from an economic development priority? Like, do you have ideas on how that might manifest? Or
Yeah, I think a lot. I hate to keep, if you could take the model where we're trying to do in Winston-Salem, where there's a lot more people involved. I would like this. I would say I would like to see the city and county a little more involved in terms of supporting Winston starts in entrepreneurship. The city has in the past, but it hasn't been consistently. So getting all public, private, more involved, realizing how important it is to economic development, and have that model replicated across the state. I think your NC idea is uniquely positioned. I call you guys the brand manager of entrepreneurship in North Carolina, and finding these hubs where it's working and going, well, here's what they're doing. Here's the components. It's not too complicated. And showing people how it's done and how they can tweak it to their market, but replicating that across the state. You're already doing that.
we're trying to. I mean, and by the way, brand manager, is that the title you gave it?
But brand manager, I'm an old brand management guy, so back in the day when brand managers were set at the hub of the spoke.
Yeah, I mean, you have a company that does that. Brand Pathways. You were
Right.
senior director of marketing communications at Eshelman School of Pharmacy. You were at this little textile company called Hanes Brands for 10 years in branding capacity. So I want to thank you for the title, and I'm accumulating titles. I was just introduced at Seed the South recently, and the MC that was the host, and he's just a tremendous personality. We were standing on the side of the stage, and he's like, "Yeah, I got your hype reel. I know how I'm going to introduce you." But he looked at me, he said, "You know how I really want to introduce you?" And I was like, "No." He said, "I just want to call you one cool mother." I was like, I thought he was just, joking. So I was like, "You say what you want, man. I don't care." And sure enough, he goes up on, in front of 300 people, and he says, "Yeah, Tom Rue, CEO of NCDL, blah, blah, blah. But you know him as Tom Rue. I know him as one cool bleep." And I was like, wow, I got a new title for my LinkedIn profile. So I'm going to add that to brand manager of entrepreneurship.
Well, Tom, I think that one's better than brand manager.
I think I get a T-shirt with that name. That was kind of fun. But coming back from the silly, especially in your whisper capacity, right? You see founders come pitch you for money. Like, what are they getting wrong, or what advice would you give these folks in these times that we're in right now? And based upon what their job is, namely to grow this company, to create value for the community and wealth for themselves, what do you tell them now?
Well, it is a tough time right now, but I'm optimistic. I'll be honest with you. I think we always find a way to pull through, and I think we will now. I don't know how long it's going to take, and I think as a founder, you have to be optimistic. You have to be resilient. We see a lot of folks come in, and I would caution them that this. with AI and people are expecting things to happen so quickly, and I think tell me it's not going to probably not going to happen real quickly. You're really going to have to get in there, use AI as a tool, but you got to go out there and you got to talk to customers. You got to find out what problem they have, and can you solve it for them, and that just takes a while, and that solution is going to have to be different. None of that's changed. That's all the same. We've got some new tools, and to use those, but before you go to ask for the money, you really got to go do that work. If we see one thing quite often is I just need $500,000, and
I just need.
and we say no, you need. Usually the answer back is no, you need some customers, either people using your product and giving you good feedback, or preferably buying it, and then the money will likely be easier. And so none of that has changed. I think it's probably easier with AI to maybe do some things up front and quicker, but there's no shortcut to figuring out what the problem is and how to solve it, and then hopefully getting some money to help you scale that up. But I'm encouraged that the folks that you mentioned, that we're all supporting, they are fantastic. And there are many more out there just like them, both in the cities and in the rural markets. And we just need to be able to find them and help them on their journey.
And I'm gonna do a plug for you in the fact that you eat your own dog food. Use the tools, use AI. I didn't want to end this episode without doing a shout out to Michael and Cammie and the Vision to Venture efforts that they're doing. We're excited. They're working on a nice tool right now to give us better data on ecosystem building using AI like we expect. The people we serve to use AI. And I always like to say to use it as a superpower and not a cheat code.
Yes.
Right. Because those are the two ways I'm seeing AI. We see it in our grant intake process.
Yeah.
We've had an explosion of applications, but it's noise. It's not frequency.
Yes.
So our denials have skyrocketed because it's people that just use it as a cheat code, right?
Just easier. Yeah.
They throw in some other prompts to doing an application, but they're not sincere about it. But you all are doing that. And it's just one of another reason why we just feel Winston Starts in particular and your community that you've intentionally built there with, the support of people like Don. You're such good partners, right? Because we manifest the behavior we ask of others. We hold everybody to account to the same standard and understand together we're stronger in doing this work.
Yeah.
And frankly, I couldn't ask for a better partner. So thank you.
Same
And I know
time.
you went into semi-retirement. I'm not going to your hand yet. You went into semi-retirement, but as I told you, we're not letting you out. Right? You got to still be around.
I'm around, Tom. And let me just I want to thank you and NCIDEA for all the support across the state, but specifically in Winston-Salem. You guys have helped several of our founders. You've helped Winston Starts, and we wouldn't be where we are, and our founders wouldn't be where they are without you guys. And I sincerely appreciate that and all that you do. So thank you.
And with that, I hope you all have enjoyed today's episode as much as I have. This is one of the many partners we are fortunate enough to work with to make North Carolina the best state in the nation to start and grow high impact companies. So as usual, if you have ideas for the pod, please let us hear from you, whether that's guests or topics. Your input is important to making this a better product. So thank you all for tuning in. Stan, thanks again.
Thanks, Tom.
And I will be seeing you for sure around the ecosystem.
Excellent. Look forward to it.
Stay connected with NCIDEA on LinkedIn and Facebook. Subscribe to our newsletter for all the latest. Catch new episodes of Ecosysteming every other Tuesday. Thanks for tuning in and being a part of this thing of ours.